Hey everybody, and welcome to the Market Down podcast where it's Thursday night. You know what that means. Welcome to the JIMPACT Zone, where it's me, James Gisanti, covering all things Impact and now Ring of Honor. A lot of good wrestling tonight. Ring of Honor is doing a little bit better getting the show to go move a little bit quicker, so I'll do the same on my end. It started off pretty well where we had a World Championship appearance. Claudio Castagnoli taking on Willie Mack. This is, I think, Willie Mack's first appearance in Ring of Honor in 2023 in this new era of Ring of Honor. Always happy to see him. A former Impact guy, a former old school Ring of Honor guy, or I guess like 2010s Ring of Honor guy. So happy to see him. Claudio just looking absolutely dominant as he has been ever since reclaiming the Ring of Honor World Championship. I still don't know how I feel about Claudio getting these wins with just the European uppercut, but I like it enough because he makes it seem imposing enough. So happy to see Claudio just looking like an absolute unit. Following that match, which wasn't for the world title, but just, you know, always nice to see the world champion doing something. We had another singles match where Dante Martin, by the way, hey, you know it. Good to see you, buddy. We had Dante Martin taking on Mike Bennett. Now, I'll be honest, I expected a pretty standard match between these two guys. I like Dante Martin. You know, he's fun. He's a very agile high flyer. But we've seen his shtick, and it's great. I'll watch it every week. But I was expecting more of that. This match did not just have that. This match had an edge to it. It was brutal. It was a lot more vicious than we're used to seeing. Dante Martin throwing Mike Bennett into the steel steps. Mike Bennett hitting a pile driver onto the outside on the steel ramp. I'll be honest, when I see a pile driver, it tends to end matches. When I see it on a steel step, I want on a steel ramp, I want to see that guy carried out in a stretcher. Didn't quite happen here. The match kept going. Dante Martin getting the 1-2-3 on Mike Bennett, getting a big win. They are putting a lot of heat on this feud. I wasn't expecting it. After getting the win, Matt Taven, Bennett's tag team partner from the OGK, comes in, starts beating down on Dante, prompting Darius to get involved and make the save. I'm very interested to see how this tag team feud is going to keep going. I'm sure we're going to get Darius versus Taven next week. Let's see if Taven gets the win there, evening the odds for his team. But good on Ring of Honor for adding some heat to this feud when a lot of what we've been seeing have been just pretty standard one-on-one matches or tag matches. Moving on, we had a tag match where we had Dante Martin. No, not Dante Martin. Jesus, guys. It's hard when you're just doing it by yourself. But we had a tag team match where Metalik and Blake Christian take on the Trustbusters. I've been a little about how Metalik has been presented, basically wrestling wide since he's left WWE. If we're going to be honest, I'm not too thrilled with how he was presented in WWE either. But the streak is over. Metalik getting the much-needed win tonight, teaming with the young Blake Christian. I didn't realize how young Blake was. He's only 25 years old. This is a great way of getting a lot of experience on the young kid, getting his name in there with much bigger names like Metalik or Ari Daivari, who I know that sounds a much bigger name, Ari Daivari. But Daivari has been presented very well since the new era of Ring of Honor has started. Even tonight in this loss, he wasn't the one who took the pin. So Christian getting a nice rub here with these vets. Christian getting more and more exposed to these crowds. Very happy to see it. And anytime Metalik gets a win, I am all for it. That did lead to later on in the night, a backstage segment where Metalik and Blake Christian were getting interviewed by Lexi Nair, and they revealed that they are interested in the Ring of Honor 6-man tag championships. They revealed their new trio member, AR Fox, I don't know what happened with AR Fox and Top Flight, but I guess that's over. They very clearly said that this is a trio. It's not just that they're going to be teaming up against the Trustbusters, who in their own segment, Mark Sterling said that that tag match didn't count because there were so many broken rules, so many illegal tags that shouldn't have that weren't acknowledged. So he had it stricken from Florida record because they are down in Orlando right now. And Ari Daivari, who was annoyed, issued a challenge for the six-man tag next week. Going back in the show a little bit, we did have a nice Mark Briscoe just chunk of time on ROH tonight, where they had a video package highlighting Mark Briscoe's history in Ring of Honor, his history with Samoa Joe, who he will be challenging at Supercard of Honor, or no, just, yeah, Supercard of Honor, where he's going to be going for the Ring of Honor TV Championship. He has never won the TV Championship in his long Ring of Honor career, and he is looking to finally break that streak of losses, not only for the title, but against Samoa Joe. That led to a Mark Briscoe promo backstage where he called out Joe, saying he was ready to go for it, but he also called out Mark Sterling, saying that he's coming for every member of the Trustbusters because Sterling had the gall to ruin his parade when he was trying to honor his brother Jay when he showed up in AEW a few weeks ago, or a month or so ago. Very excited to see what Mark can do. I'm hoping he wins the title from Joe. Just for the emotional standpoint alone, it's going to be great. And Mark has been proving himself again and again every week as a singles competitor now that run, unfortunately, is over. And speaking of that run being over, they did address the AEW announcement that Mark made a few weeks ago on Rampage, where the Ring of Honor Tag Team Championships will be on the line at Supercard in a Reach for the Sky Tag Team ladder match. So far, only one team has been announced, and that's the Lucha Bros, and I'm very excited to see that match. It'll be a great way to honor Jay, a great way to honor the legacy of the Briscoes, and a great way to move the tag team division forward. Moving forward ourselves, we had another singles match between Eddie Kingston and Jeeves K of the Trustbusters. I'll be honest, I know Jeeves isn't some unknown entity. He's showed up in AEW before on Dark and Elevation. I'm not too familiar with him, and I didn't get to be that much more familiar with him tonight because it was a very quick match, and as quick as it was, the real story was the fact that World Champion Claudio came out and sat in the crowd ringside watching the match. Eddie throws Jeeves into the barricade, spilling Claudio's coffee all over him, prompting Claudio to leave. Now, I don't know if Eddie knows this, but coffee being dropped on a wrestler has started feuds before. And I know Eddie wants Claudio, but this might be taking it a step too far. I hope he's willing to deal with the repercussions of this horrid act, but I have a feeling Eddie Kingston can survive. Eddie survived this match, getting the win, making Jeeves tap out to a Dragon Sleeper. Jumping up ahead, we had our first women's match of the night, where Ring of Honor Women's Champion Athena took on Hyan. I'm not too familiar with Hyan. She joined the Ring of Honor women's roster in 2021 when they restarted that women's division. And she had an impressive display tonight. She looked good. Unfortunately, not good enough when the world champion is Athena. Athena looked absolutely dominant, looked strong, looked imposing, looked cocky, looked scary. When she got in the face of that referee, I wasn't ready for it. I know she's put her hands on refs before, but man, there's something about it that just sent a shiver down my back. Very proud of Athena and this new attitude she has, this new persona that she's been rocking. She has always been this good. I'm just finally glad that people are getting to see it. After the match, she cuts a promo calling out backstage, calling out a Japanese wrestler who I admit I'm not too familiar with, but she laid the challenge for Supercard of Honor. Very excited to see Athena being able to wrestle in such a high-profile match on pay-per-view. I'm sure she'll live up to the challenge. We then had another singles match. The returning, first time I think in 2023. It's been a year, they said, since we've seen him in a Ring of Honor ring. Silas Young taking on poor Marcus Cross, who went from 0-1 to 0-2. Silas Young, he might not be everybody's cup of tea, but the last real man got a dominant win tonight, hitting a lot of his usual spots. His moonsault, his springboard moonsault, getting the 1-2-3 for him. He then picks up the mic after the match and declares how he is one of the best of all time Ring of Honor World TV champions. Before he can go too much further, he is interrupted by Shane Taylor, who also claims he is one of the best, if not the best, Ring of Honor World TV champions. So that leads to obviously a match for next week. Very interested to see who gets the win in that. Very interested to see how that impacts the ROH TV division. We then move into our first of two title matches for the night. The Ring of Honor 6-man tag team championships being defended by the Embassy against Dalton Castle and the boys. I've said it week after week. I'm a big, big mark for Dalton Castle, just as big a mark for the boys. Unfortunately, me screaming and cheering them on and sending them all my spirit energy wasn't enough for them to get the win tonight, as the Embassy looked dominant in victory. Khan got the win by pinning both boys simultaneously after the match, which was a little clunky. I don't want to rip into it too much because all 6 guys really did put in a lot of effort, but it did feel like there were some pacing issues, maybe from just trying to get all their spots in very quickly, wanting to pack in as much as possible. It did feel a little clunky, but after the match, they continue the beatdown on the boys and Dalton Castle, prompting this new trio of Metalik, Blake Christian, and AR Fox to come out and make the save. I'm all for it. I don't know how I feel. It feels like a very meshed up team. I don't see them. I mean, they're probably going to get a title shot, but I don't see them getting the win. But who knows? Maybe Tony Khan wants to keep Brian Cage happy as he's looking to get his contract elsewhere, or end his contract and move elsewhere. We then had our second women's match of the night between Trish Adora and Madison Rayne. Very happy to see Madison Rayne back in Ring of Honor. She was doing a lot of good work for them in the past. And as someone who admittedly last week wasn't too familiar with Trish Adora, very excited to see her continuing to build momentum. Unfortunately, the crowd did not share my sentiment. They were not there for this match. The women did their best. They put on a fine showing, but the crowd just did not care. It kind of impacted the ending of the match, or the back end of the match, but both women put on a fine showing. Trish Adora getting a win, building that momentum, like I said, and possibly getting closer and closer, maybe, to a women's title match down the line. We then had a tag team match between Christopher Daniels and Matt Sydal taking on the Outrunners. Now, guys, I got to tell you, I've been a wrestling fan for a very long time. I've watched the product. I've read about the product. I've played the games. I've fantasy booked in my head. I don't think I could have ever come up with better names, better individual names for wrestlers than Truth Magnum and Turbo Floyd. That is so 80s, it hurts. It absolutely hurts. It was a lot of fun. It was very funny. And seeing Daniels and Sydal team up for the first time legitimately as a tag team in so many years was very fun. It was very exciting. They got a quick win, a good win, looking strong, looking dominant as they're looking to plant their flag in the tag team division. Speaking of flags, speaking of tag team divisions, we had Aussie Open come out and confront this old team. And believe me, old was emphasized by Aussie Open, talking about the fact that these two men held the Ring of Honor Tag Team Championships before in 2006, when Carl Frederick said he was only 7 years old. I feel old right now, guys. It's not cool. I don't appreciate it, Carl. Not right. But they say that they represent the future of tag team wrestling, the future of the tag division here in Ring of Honor, and they challenge them to a match next week. Christopher Daniels picks up the mic after they leave, happily accepts the challenge, and says that all that's happened between now and 2006 was that he and Seidel have gotten more and more experience. I love seeing CD again. I was very sad to see him have a much smaller role in AEW. So to see him thrive here in Ring of Honor, Seidel as well, by the way, who never really found his footing in AEW, just being thrown from one team or one group or one weird story after another. I'm very glad to see these guys who have done so much for wrestling, especially on the independent scene, be able to flourish in this new old environment. But moving forward to the main event of Ring of Honor, we had the ROH Pure Championship being defended by Wheeler Yuta against Clark Connors. Now, I've only had the opportunity to see Clark Connors wrestle once before, and that was for the what was the All-Atlantic Championship, now the International Championship in AEW. It was a fatal four-way. He impressed a lot of people. He impressed me. Unfortunately, last week I couldn't put two and two together, but when I saw it this week, I was very happy to be reminded. He looked explosive in this match. He looked great in this match. He looked strong in this match, and I love the psychology of this match. As you guys know, when it comes to the Pure Championship, there are sets of rules. You can't use closed fists, otherwise you will be disqualified after your first warning. And you can only have a limit of 3 rope breaks. Well, champion Wheeler Yuta knew that. He knew that, and he took advantage of those rules. He got Clark Connors in an early submission, forcing him to get his first rope break. He got him in another submission, forcing him into his second rope break. He then put him in a third submission, hoping to prompt him to get another rope break, but instead Connors hits him with a closed fist, prompting his first warning about the closed fist rule. If he had done it again, there would have been a disqualification. Yuta, knowing about that rule as well, takes the opportunity to hit him with a closed fist himself and really showed how this new heelish BCC is affecting his personality. And speaking of which, I do want to acknowledge that Claudio, earlier in the night, I don't know how he's being presented here in Ring of Honor. He doesn't quite feel like a heel. He feels way more aggressive. He feels way more vicious, but he still honored the code of honor at the end of the match with Willie Mack, shaking his downed opponent's hand, walking out. I don't know. There seems to be a little bit of a disparity, at least with Claudio, between who he is in Ring of Honor and who he is in AEW. But going back to this match, after hitting that first closed fist, Connors got him in a submission, and that led to Yuta utilizing his first utilizing his first rope break. As the match continued, both men trading back and forth submissions, back and forth holds, until Wheeler was able to roll him up and get the 1, 2, 3. Wheeler Yuta is proving the strength of this Pure division, proving his strength as a champion, and why this change of pace. Again, a lot of guys, I've said it, who weren't quite nailing it in their appearances in AEW are killing it here in Ring of Honor. And that's not, I've been under the assumption that maybe they couldn't cut it in AEW, but I don't think that's the case anymore, guys. What I think it is that they just needed to be in the environment that best suited them. Not everybody should be in WWE. Not everybody should be in AEW. Not everybody should be in Impact, and not everybody should be in Ring of Honor. The best thing about all these different landscapes is somebody is going to find the right home. Hopefully, as many wrestlers as they can find places to thrive and find the places they belong. Wheeler Yuta certainly has, and it hasn't affected his ego. Oh, wait, it has. As he gets on the mic afterwards and says he's tired of beating all of these young guys, all these young lions. So Clark Connors is one of the best from the LA dojo that New Japan has. So he doesn't want to face anyone else from the dojo. He wants to face the head of the dojo, none other than Shibata. Guys, If Shibata accepts this challenge, which I'm sure he will, I am going to lose my mind at the possibility of him winning a championship here in the United States, or a championship in general. This prompted Claudio to come out and congratulate the young member of, I made sure not to say junior member of the BCC, and stand strong holding both championships in the ring. I don't know if Wheeler bit off a little more than he could chew. A win over Shibata is going to be a big, big deal. His former Best Friends member, Orange Cassidy, did it, but I don't know if Wheeler will be able to do the same, especially under Pure rules. Time will tell, but this was a fun episode of Ring of Honor. Very excited to see what they have planned as we get closer and closer to Supercard in a couple of weeks. Moving on to Impact. Welcome to the JIMPACT Zone once again. I see your comment there. You know it. You didn't really get to catch Ring of Honor, but you did catch most of Impact. I'm glad you waited. I'm glad you stuck it out with me. Our first match of the night saw an unlikely duo. We saw Jonathan Gresham teaming up with his former opponent, Speedball Mike Bailey, to take on The Decay. I'll be honest, I love all four men in this match, so this was hard for me to watch. I knew one team had to lose, and I knew what team it was going to be. Unfortunately, that team being The Decay. Speedball and Gresham looked dominant. If all wrestlers find a home, it would be devastating to catering. You're absolutely right. You know, unfortunately, there are only so many jobs in professional wrestling. I do think that the more companies there are, the better. AEW having Ring of Honor proves that, in my opinion. But yeah, we go back to this tag team match. Gresham and Speedball taking on The Decay. Speedball and Gresham looked absolutely dominant. Just absolutely dominant, taking on Black Taurus and Crazy Steve. Both Steve and Taurus coming off losses, going after the X Division title. I'm hoping that they're able to regain some momentum moving forward. Tonight was unfortunately not their night. Speedball, Gresham keeping Crazy Steve at bay for long periods of time, just allowing Speedball to just continue to dominate Black Taurus until finally hitting him with the ultimate move, the ultimate maneuver, and getting the pin. I don't know if I want this team to continue. It seems a little OP, but if I was a tag team in Impact, I would be terrified. Maybe. Because later on in the night, we had a tag team segment between, not a tag team segment. Guys, I'm looking at all this. It gets overwhelming. But we had a backstage segment with Gresham and Speedball backstage, where Gresham goes up to Speedball and addresses some of the tension that they had earlier in the night. After they got the win, there was a little bit of hot dogging between the two, a little bit of arm slapping. Who's the real macho alpha male? Wasn't expecting that from Speedball, but that did lead to a begrudging handshake. As Gresham brought it up to him and talked about their makeshift tag team, Speedball said he appreciates all their work together and appreciates their back and forth, but he can't forget his loss to Gresham at the last pay-per-view, and he wants that rematch. Gresham happily obliges, and I believe at Sacrifice we're going to get Jonathan Gresham versus Speedball Mike Bailey 2. The first one was a great match. I am sure this next one will be just as good. We then had a backstage segment where Josh Alexander, Frankie Kazarian, and Rich Swann hype themselves up as they have their tag team trios match tonight against Bullet Club, Ace Austin, Chris Bay, and Kenta. As they're talking, they get interrupted by Steve Macklin, who just must have like a homing beacon on Josh Alexander. And this notion of Rich Swann being the weak link keeps kind of coming up. But I will say, of the three men, he is one of them who actually has a former world title to his name. Can't say the same for Frankie Kazarian, so I don't know why this keeps getting pushed. But it will probably lead to some dissension later on. We then had another backstage interview where Giselle Shaw was getting interviewed by Gia Miller. She talks about her problems with Deonna Purrazzo, how she does not how when Deonna Purrazzo couldn't get the win against Mickie James, she then decided that Giselle couldn't get the win against Mickie James. All this is interrupted by Johnny Swinger. Okay. Johnny Swinger still on his chase for his 50. Honestly, he's chasing his first win, period. And he decides to challenge Jay Vidal for hopefully his first win on this chase to 50. I don't care. It's funny. I get it. Sure. I'm sure some of you guys like him. I've never been a big Johnny Swinger guy, but they're doing their best. I'm not going to rip on him too much, but it just doesn't do it for me. But this does lead to Jay Vidal's first match, which we'll talk about in a little bit. We then had Steve Maclin taking on Heath. Now, ever since Heath has come to Impact Wrestling, he has looked very, very strong. That was not the case tonight. Maclin decimated him. Maclin absolutely destroyed his opponent. I felt bad for Heath, guys. I felt bad for Heath. This felt like 3MB Heath, and he shouldn't be presented this way. I know this was more about Maclin. I know this wasn't about making Heath look bad. This was about making Maclin look good. And hey, he took out Rhino before. Now it's only fair that he's coming for Heath, and he needs to look good when he goes against Josh Alexander. But man, this was rough. He finishes the match with the KIA, and that's all there is for Heath. But not the last we'll see of Steve Maclin tonight. We then go to a backstage segment where the Death Dolls are talking about their feud with the Coven and their upcoming title match for the Knockouts Tag Team Championship. Rosemary talking about how they are so excited to, unfortunately, Killer Kelly turned them down for wanting help when it came to the Coven, but they still have the Coven in their sights. Jessica is thrilled at the notion of dealing with magic, which scares Taya Valkyrie a little bit. Taya, who pulled off her own magic this week, appearing in both AEW and Impact in 1 week, says that magic is scary, it's not to be trifled with, and instead, Jessica, why don't you go do your favorite thing and go drink? Apparently, that's her favorite thing. Bottomless mimosas. Jessica ran for it, leaving the match to be between Taya Valkyrie and Rosemary instead of Jessica. When explaining why she wanted her away from this match and magic, she's afraid that she'll be reminded that she used to be Havoc. This is a very interesting way to handle this. Magic is apparently very real in Impact. I love it. It's weird. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense, but that's what makes it make perfect sense. I love this bit. I love the Death Dolls in general. I love all of their chemistry, especially between Taya and Rosemary, and it was just great to see such a fun segment. Moving on, we do finally get to the Jay Vidal versus Johnny Swinger match. It was a match. Jay looked good. For my first exposure to him as a wrestler, he looked good. But the highlight of the match was when Deonna Purrazzo came out and attacked Giselle Shaw. She had to be escorted away by security. Very much looking forward to their match at Sacrifice. I think both women are killing it, are near the top of the division, even if they're not champion. And I hope they get the time to put on a great stellar match at Sacrifice. We then have a backstage promo where the Design talk about Callahan and what happened last week, where Big Con smashed Callahan in the head with a chair, and how it didn't even matter about steps 1 through 5, because step 6, when they get interrupted by Callahan, who wants to know what the hell that was. How is he supposed to get through step 6 if Big Con is going to do stuff like that and screw him? Diener tells him that step 6 wasn't about winning a match. It was about proving that he could take his punishment like a man. Callahan doesn't seem happy about it, but he does what he has to, and he accepts it, and that's all she wrote. We're past step 6. Let's see what step 7 is moving forward for the Design and Callahan, who I don't know why he wants to be with them. They kind of suck. At least as teammates, I suppose. But I'm sure he has his reasons, even if it is just to tear them down. We then go to a backstage conversation between Tommy Dreamer and Mickie James, where Mickie reveals that she just found out that there's going to be a tag team match next week on Impact between themselves and Bully Ray and Masha Slamovich, requested by Tommy Dreamer himself. She asks if he's sure he wants to do that, if it's wise after everything he's been through, and of course he wants to. He's Tommy Dreamer, is the innovator of violence and all that jazz. But Mickey's not the only one concerned. Out comes Jordan Grace, who's also worried about Mickie James confronting Masha Slamovich a day before their match at Sacrifice for the Impact Knockouts World Championship. She says she barely got through Masha last time. Why would she want to do it again? And she better be ready for their match the next day. I'm very excited to see Mickie mixing it up with all these contenders for her title. Masha, it's just a matter of time before she's champion. Jordan Grace, a proven entity in her own right. This Knockouts division is, as always, incredible. Moving on, we have what was sort of a recurring segment throughout the night, once again, where PCO is just wandering Vegas, wandering the desert, trying to get closer to Impact and therefore closer to Eddie Edwards. There were several segments of this throughout the night, culminating with Eddie Edwards coming out to the ring and saying how much he just wants to move on from PCO, but the crowd and PCO won't let him. He wants to focus on himself. He wants to focus on the future and what that means for Eddie Edwards. But how can he when this living dead zombie won't leave him alone? And speak of the devil or whatever PCO is, here he comes, getting ready. Hell of an entrance, as always, for PCO. Getting ready to come to the ring and just absolutely throttle Eddie Edwards. But we are finally introduced to who drove the car last week and saved Eddie Edwards, using that car to hit PCO and to get Eddie straight out of Dodge. None other than his old Honor No More tag team partner or just team member, Kenny King. It's a little disappointing. I have been saying for a while, I have been wanting more for Kenny King, that ever since Honor No More ended, he's sort of just been wrestling. He's just sort of been doing things. He did have the match with Speedball, the Fight Pit match, but it just, he's been floundering. He's been wandering. This may give him a little bit of direction, which is great, but considering who the alternative it could have been driving that car, Davey Richards, the old Eddie Edwards' old partner, this does come off a little shallow. Both men just wailing on PCO, hitting him with shovels, hitting him with chairs. Eddie Edwards hitting him with a shining wizard to the chair. That hurt my knee. Eddie, why would you hit the chair into his head? Hit his head into the chair. Like, just common sense, Eddie. But it seems that there will be a team coming out of Honor No More, something to stick around, and that will be Kenny King and Eddie Edwards. I'll be honest with you guys, I fear for Kenny King's safety as he enters a feud with PCO on Eddie Edwards' behalf. I'm sure he's going to be fed, and maybe I was wrong. Maybe he should stay wandering, because this is not a good direction for Kenny King. But time will tell how this feud will unfold. Honor No More has been a thing in Impact for, I think, a year at this point with how they've handled it. It feels much longer, and we're still feeling the repercussions of that group despite their disbanding and half the team just leaving. But yeah, what did you think of it, guys? Did you enjoy that segment? Do you enjoy the cartooniness of that Impact sometimes delivers? I do, but I like my wrestling in all different flavors. Speaking of different flavors, say his name, he will appear. I believe in Joe Hendry. I swear to you guys, one day he's going to be on this podcast. It is my goal of this podcast to get Joe Hendry here. It might not have worked for me, but it did work for Santino Marella and Dirty Dango. Santino having a fun reunion with well, we can't say his name. Well, they can't say his name, but I will. Vladimir Kozlov. I love seeing Santino bouncing off these characters, these comedic characters. Vladimir Kozlov, a wrestler from my childhood. Well, I'm not that old, but still, Vladimir Kozlov looking great, looking fun, reuniting with his old tag team partner. As long as they don't overdo it. What's that? The weird stuff like PCO and everything. I agree. I feel like moderation is always key for segments like that and for storylines like that. So yeah, I agree with you. You know it. But as Dirty Dango tried saying, "Is that you know who?" Santino warns him his own name might have been liberated, but Vlad's wasn't, so we got to be careful. Joe Hendry comes out and requests to something I've never seen before, which was activate a rematch clause despite winning. He wants to use Brian Myers' rematch clause to give him a rematch for the Digital Media Championship. After what happened last week where Moose and Myers attacked him, he wants that match with Myers, and Santino gives it to him. Dirty Dango is just gushing over Joe Hendry. Very seems to be a fanboy. I love that notion of it. Dango has been killing it in the comedy department, which shouldn't surprise us. But he offers, if he needs some help to take them on as a team, he's there for him next week, and Santino makes the match. Dirty Dango and Joe Hendry versus Moose and Myers. Dango then tries to hang out with Hendry, but Hendry blows him off very politely. We'll see how that team works next week, but I love this comedy duo, and I would love for them to interact a little bit more. We then have our Impact's Knockout World Tag Team Championship match between the Death Dolls and the Coven. I'll be honest, I was not expecting this outcome. Maybe I should have, considering who showed up on AEW this week, but the Coven taking the tag titles from the Death Dolls. Man, that sucks. Very sad to see Taya or Rosemary ever lose, but the Coven seems to be hot right now. Taylor Wilde and Kylan King. Good for Kylan King, leaving AEW where she wasn't being used and coming to Impact to prove herself. Her first real match in Impact. I know she wrestled on BTI last year, late last year, but this is really her true debut, and she got a tag team title right out the gate. Great for King, great for Wilde. I don't know what this means for Taya Valkyrie. I don't know if this is her last appearance in Impact. I hope she has a better send-off than this, but the Death Dolls are definitely going to be dealing with some witchy magic drama moving forward. And this was a good match between the four women. They really put on a good showing. They always do. The Death Dolls, at least. Taylor Wilde, always looking good at herself. Kylan King, like I said, proving herself. Example, the man in the crowd using a unicorn onesie, definitely doing too much. You know, we here at the Market Down podcast, especially here in the JIMPACT Zone, want everybody to be their true selves, you know it. Sometimes that means wearing a unicorn onesie. Am I going to do it? Probably not. But what do I know? I probably wouldn't fit into it anyway. But the Impact Knockouts World Tag Team title, the Death Dolls were the longest reigning women to hold the championship. I know Diener and ODB held it for a while, but as genuine competitors in the division, the Death Dolls had the longest reign, and it is now over. I feel like there's a lot of fun, interesting directions we could move forward with all of these women. Time will tell what this means for Taya Valkyrie, if she's just going to be AEW bound, or if the Death Dolls are just going to be Jessica and Rosemary, or now that this tease of Havoc maybe. We'll see. But congratulations to the new tag team champions, the Coven. Now, moving on to our main event, we have World Champion Josh Alexander, Frankie Kazarian, and Rich Swann versus Bullet Club. Guys, this was exactly the match you thought it would be. It was fast-paced. It was hard-hitting. It's always good to see Kenta wrestling as much as possible. The ABC Ace Bay connection. I'm loving this team. The Impact Zone is also loving this team, with Bay getting a lot of cheers. sad but glad Kylan win was positive for you. Happy to hear it. You know it. I agree. Always want to see people thriving and proving themselves when they can. But yeah, we had this this trios match. It was going swimmingly for Team Alexander until Steve Macklin shows up just enough to briefly distract Alexander and essentially take him out of the match. This led to Rich Swann just basically being triple teamed by Bullet Club and suffering the 1-2-3 loss. Again, they're really trying to paint Rich Swann as the weak link of this team. I get it. I don't like it, but I get it. But we'll see if this leads to a heel turn for Swann and a possible match with Alexander, whether that's for the title or not. Alexander still has a lot on his plate with a match against Steve Macklin for the title, a match with Kushida for the title. Who knows how long this reign is for this world. But guys, that was Impact, that was Ring of Honor, and this is the JIMPACT Zone. I hope you liked being here with me. I hope you liked Impact. I hope you liked Ring of Honor, and I hope you liked me, because I like you guys. Tell me what you thought of the show. Please leave it in the comments. You know, we have all of our social media stuff. Please go follow us. If you're watching us on YouTube, like it. Go follow us on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or the TikTok, whatever the kids are using nowadays. And if you're not watching us there and you're watching us on any of those social media platforms, go to YouTube, subscribe. We really love it. We really need it. And the more we get, the more you guys get. So this is James Gisanti. Once again, please remember what I always say. Watch Impact, watch Ring of Honor, and have a good night.
Oh, boy.
Oh, God.
I don't know what my only crime was being happy. That's all I did.